Welcome to the third part of the 3D platformer series. In the previous episodes, we've already made a basic 3D engine with rotation and camera movement, but now it's time to actually fill the faces and make solid platformer blocks. So if you're ready, let's dive right into Scratch. All 3D games are composed of many triangles, so before we start filling, we need to clearly define the vertices we'll be dealing with. Let's create a third set of coordinates, x3, y3, and z3, as well as a dedicated custom block, set.3, xyz. Fill it in just like for the previous 2 points. Then create a new block called filltri, x1, y1, z1, x2, y2, z2, x3, y3, z3, and res for resolution. We're gonna process the third point in exactly the same way as we did for the previous 2 points. First by subtracting the camera position, then applying the rotation matrix. And for the other 2 points, you can just copy this chunk over here, or to keep things more organized, make a separate block out of this called 2-point processing, and place it in the respective areas. Next we want to project the points using the goto blocks and take their x and y positions like this. Notice how the z here is blank. That's because triangle filling is done in 2D, so we only need to know x and y. Now that we got the points defined, it's time to actually fill the triangle. Now the easiest way to do this is by filling each row one at a time. That's exactly what I did in my previous tutorial, but since then I realized that this method sucked. Do you see how much movement there is to fill a single square? And there's gonna be a lot of them in our game, so unless you want to run it at 2 FPS, you need to find something better. Some sort of an algorithm that covers the entire face of the triangle with as little strokes as possible. And luckily there is one, and it's extremely fast. First of all, it takes a triangle and draws the biggest circle that could possibly fit inside. This is known as the incircle. Now to draw it, we need 2 pieces of information: its center and radius. Now the center coordinates are found using this equation, and as you can see, it includes the side lengths of the triangle. So let's create a variable for each of the sides. Now instead of the classic ABC, I'll do side 1, side 2, and side 3, just so they match our existing points. Next, find the length of each side using subtrig and sub them into the center equation to set the right coordinates. Then we have the radius. Let's call it r and find it using this formula over here. Then set the pen size to twice the radius because the thickness here is the diameter of our pen. Now just put pen down, reset the pen size at the start, split one of the faces with another line, and add the filltri block. That's a good start, but how do we fill in the rest of the triangle? Here's the method. We're gonna loop around the incircle, drawing smaller and smaller lines until the corners are basically filled in. I mean, honestly, they will never be filled in completely, but we can get pretty close. And just so this video doesn't turn into a math lecture, I won't go too deep into how this works, but basically, what happens is we're scaling down the radius by a variable called r-factor, then offsetting each of our corners and recording the coordinates with these variables. So for example, point 1 would have an offset with the coordinates 01x, 01y, and so on. And this ultimately allows us to build the desired path, which we can continue doing until the pen size is smaller than resolution. This is what the final code should look like. And I know this may have been a little fast, so if you'd like me to clarify anything, then feel free to ask in the comments. Anyway, now set the rest to 2, and you should see the triangle completely filled in. Let's now try to draw a second triangle using the same block but a different set of coordinates, and possibly change the pen brightness to distinguish it from the other triangle. And we have a proper face now. But watch what happens when we try to add a third triangle. Yeah. So because the triangles are drawn in this order, the third one ends up overlapping the other 2. What we need is a depth sorting algorithm that will draw the faces in the correct order. That's exactly what we'll be doing in the next episode, so be sure to subscribe to not miss it out. See ya!